Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel and today we will cover about the memory concept. So let's start. Have you ever wondered how your computer actually remembers things? Like how does it open apps so fast? Where does it store your games, document or even the operating system itself? Well, it all comes down to one of the most critical yet often misunderstood parts of any computing device, memory. In this video, we are going to explore what exactly memory is in the computer, the different types of memory, the real differentiate between RAM and ROM, and how the CPU, the brain of the computer, uses memory every second to keep things running smoothly. Whether you are a student, a tech enthusiast, or just someone who's curious about how computers work, understanding memory is essential. We will break everything down in simple words, no heavy jargons, just clear explanations, some cool visuals, and maybe even a few analogies to help it all click. So, computer memory. So, basic question is what is the memory? What is the definition? The computer memory is electronic storage where instructions and data are needed for fast access and kept essential for proper system operation. Memory acts like a human brain, storing both data and instructions for processing, including input and output information. As we previously video we discussed about what is the computer. Computer is just follow the instructions, take the input and process it and provide some output. Yeah, and actually the communication with CPU occurs via the system bus, which includes data bus, address bus, and control bus. So what the data bus does carries the data, transfer the actual data between CPU and memory, and address bus carries address location, carries the memory address that specifies where the data should be read or written to. Control bus carries the control signals, sends signal that coordinates and control the activity such as indicating read or write operations. Coordinated by a memory controller mostly now inside the CPU for speed. We are just covered about the communication, how the CPU and memory are communicate have done. CPU uses the system bus. System bus has three buses, data bus, address bus, and control bus. We can also refer these emails. You can see here how actually the architecture should looks like. Now we will go further. Basic CPU memory communication steps. Now let's start. So first of all, CPU places address on address bus, sends read and write signal via control bus, and data is transferred via data bus depending on operation. Now let's explore about the computer memory types. Now computer memory types. There are mainly memory, primary memory, secondary memory, and cache memory. Now in the primary memory, what is the primary memory? First of all, we should understand that the primary memory is known as the main memory. It's fast and also the temporary and uses the same conductor, we can say. It's a temporary because it's not store the data for the permanent. It's stores the data for the some certain period of time. So there are the two types of primary memory. It's a very popular, and I know you already knows about the RAM and ROM. RAM is stands for the random access memory, and ROM is stands for read-only memory. So RAM is the volatile data lost if power fails, stores active data programs, and in the RAM also there are the sub types. Uh, Such like SRAM and DRAM, static RAM, and another one is the dynamic RAM. Static RAM is a fast and uses the flip-flops, And the dynamic RAM is a slower and uses capacitors and need a refreshing. Because of the refreshing, it's a little bit slower than the static RAM. Now let's move on about the ROM. So ROM is just an opposite of the RAM. As RAM is a volatile and ROM is non-volatile. Keeps data if power fails. Permanent instructions. So there are the few subtypes of the ROM. MROM, PROM, EPROM, E double EPROM, and it's mainly the various usability and programming capabilities. Now let's move forward with another type of the memory. We will cover just the primary memory. Now let's start with the secondary memory. Secondary memory is also known as a auxiliary and backup memory. It's a slower and permanent storage. And the secondary memory has types like magnetic taps, magnetic disk, and optical disk. And we will also move ahead in depth in further videos, but in this video about we will understand only the secondary memory purpose is secondary memory is slower and permanently storage. Now let's move forward with the cache memory. Cache memory is a high speed and known as a small size buffer between CPU and main memory. Speeds up frequently accessed data, fast but expensive because of the semiconductor used, small in capacity. In summary, I would say that the cache memory is just like high speed and before the frequently asked questions and the information, or maybe can say the data is stored in the cache, so we so don't require to go to the memory repeatedly if we find the data in the cache. Now let's discuss some questions and answers which are common and also in asked in big tech companies. So first of all, we will understand and prepare the answer is what is the memory in the computer science. The answer should be like memory in a computer science refers to hardware devices used to store data temporarily or permanently. It allows the CPU to quickly access instructions and data while performing tasks. There are two types: primary memory, like RAM and cache, and secondary memory, like hard drives or SSDs. Now, the second question look like what is the difference between RAM and ROM? RAM is temporary fast access memory used by the CPU to store the data and instructions for currently running programs. ROM is permanently memory that holds essential instructions like the BIOS, and it's not meant to be returned to during normal use. Now another question is what is a cache memory? Why is it important? How actually it works? Now cache memory is a small high-speed memory located close to or inside the CPU. It stores frequently accessed data and instructions to reduce the time it takes the CPU to access the main memory. It helps improve system performance significantly. When the CPU needs to data, it first checks the cache. If the data is found, we can call a cache hit. It is accessed quickly. If not, then we can call like a cache miss. The CPU retrieves the data from the main memory and stores in the cache for future use. This mechanism ensures that frequently accessed data remains readily available. There are another types of the cache memory like L1 cache, L2 cache, and L3 cache. L1 cache is located inside the CPU core. It is the smallest and fastest cache. The typically the range is smaller, 2 KB to 64 KB. And another one is a L2 cache, which is a larger than L1. It may be located inside or outside the CPU core, and the range is from 256 KB to 5.2 KB. Another one is a L3 cache, shared among all CPU cores. It is the largest and slowest cache with size range from above 1 MB, I can say. Now, the another question would be like, what happens when the computer runs out of the RAM? So the answer should be like, when a computer runs out of RAM, it starts using the hard disk or SSD as virtual memory. Now your question is, what is the virtual memory? We will cover on next question. So virtual memory, which is much slower. This can lead to perform issues, lag, or system freezing. The operating system may also terminate background processes to free up the RAM. Now, let's come to the point. Another question is, explain virtual memory. The virtual memory is a section of a third of a hard drive that is used as if it were RAM. It allows a system to handle larger workloads that the physical RAM can support. However, because storage drives are slower than RAM, using virtual memory can reduce performance. Now let's move to the sixth question. What is the role of memory management in an OS? The OS uses memory management to allocate, track, and optimize how memory is used by different programs and processes. It ensures each application gets enough memory, avoids conflicts, and reclaims unused memory. It's critical for system stability and performance. I hope you understand what I am trying to explain you. Now, the second question is, how does the CPU access the memory? As we already covered, but yeah, now the CPU access memory via memory bus and uses users addresses to locate data. It first checks the cache, then RAM, and then finally store switch if needed. This hierarchy is known as a memory hierarchy, and it's designed to balance speed and cost. Now let's move to another question. Why is memory? Why is RAM faster than storage memory? RAM uses semiconductors based circuits that allows data to be read or written almost instantly, while storage devices like SSDs, HDDs have more complex read write mechanism and slower access times. RAM is optimized for read while storage is optimized for capacity. Now another question is, what is the BIOS, and where it is stored? The BIOS, the basic input output system, is a firmware that initializes the test hardware during the booting process. Booting, I can say, it's starting the initial point where the system is started. Just we have press the power on the button of our PC and laptop. It's stored in ROM and double EEPROM on the motherboard. It's the first code that runs when the power on your computer is on. Okay, so let's move to the another question. What are memory leaks and how to prevent them? This question is commonly asked in big tech companies, and it's a very popular and very common answer is, a memory leak happens when the program allocates memory and fails to release it, and after it's no longer needed, causing performance degradation and crashes over time. Whatever we memory allocated for a reason, we have just forget to release it, then the memory leaks problem may cause, which degrade our system. How to prevent this scenario? Use automatic garbage collection, mainly provides in Java and Python, and also in C++ manually free or delete memory. Use smart pointers in C++ and use tools like Valgrind, Leak Sanitizer, or Visual Studio Profiler. There are some common ways we can prevent the memory leaks, which makes our system more advanced. Now the another question is explain how garbage collection works. Garbage collections is the process of automatically identifying and reclaiming memory that is no